everybody, welcome to my garage and welcome to my workshop. Today what we're going to start on is the neck for the Warmoth Stratocaster build. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go over, make sure the neck's straight, check for any high frets. If there's high frets, we're going to do a level and a crown and then dress the frets, then polish the frets, and then we'll move on to beveling the edges and taking care of the whole neck process to make the neck as smooth and as playable as possible. First thing you need to do is you need to check and make sure that your neck is straight. And what I've got is a straight edge with notches on it. What I'll do is those notches will cover over the frets, put it on the fretboard, take a look and see if there's if you can see any light between the straight edge and the fretboard, and then if necessary make adjustments to your truss rod to get your neck perfectly straight for this first portion. So this straight edge has two different sides to it. One side is Gibson scale, the 2 3/4, and or the 24 3/4, and then the top side here is for the Strat scale, 25 1/2. So what we'll do is we'll just take it, set it across the frets, it straddles the frets, and we look for any daylight between the straight edge and the fretboard. And this neck right now is perfectly straight. If I needed to make adjustments, what I would do is I would just make adjustments with the truss rod and here. It's important to remember this neck is a modern construction neck from Warmoth, so it also has the side adjust. This is a micro adjuster. It's not meant to make drastic changes to the neck. You only use this after it's installed on the guitar, and then you can make slight adjustments to get your relief right on your neck. So now that we know that our neck's straight, what we want to do now, I've got this fret rocker and I've got a Sharpie. So what we're going to do is we're just going to straddle a couple frets, see if there's any rock. And I always check it for a couple places along the neck or on the radius, just in case the frets weren't exactly level when they were installed. Okay, we're getting a little bit of rock on this fret, so we're just going to mark it. So we know that one's a little high compared to the ones around it. And you'll notice the fret rocker's got different sides on it, so as you move, you may have to switch sides to get, because you only want 3 frets, because if you have more than 3 frets, it's not going to rock. Getting some rock there. Getting a little bit on this fret. And a little bit on this one. So what we ended up with, our 6th fret is high, our 9th fret is a little high, our 11th fret is a little high, 13th, 14th are all a little bit high. Not too bad, but just a little bit high. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to level the frets. What I'll do is I'm just going to take a Sharpie across the top of each fret, just a line, and then what I'll do is we'll go over this with a leveling beam, and when all the Sharpie has gone off the top of the frets, we know that they're all leveled, and then it'll be time to crown. I don't know if you can see that well in the camera, but I've marked the top of the frets with Sharpie, and then what we'll do now is we'll get the leveling beam and go over and level these. Alright, so what I've done is I've got 320 or 220 sandpaper on one side of this beam and 320 on the other side. There wasn't that much, the rock was very, very minor. So basically just lay the beam across and I'm just letting the weight of the beam do the work. I'm not pressing down on this at all. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to go back over with the fret rocker again and check and see how everything is. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to put some fall off onto this. basically about the last 5 or 6 frets, I want to drop off, have a little bit steeper drop off, because your truss rod doesn't really affect the heel that much. So what you want is when it gets to that point, you want the frets to just have a little bit of a drop off. The best way to do that is I'm just going to pick right here where I want my drop off to start. And I'm going to put some tape. Not a lot, just a little bit of a buildup. One more piece. So I've got my shorter sanding beam with some 320 paper. What I'm going to do is trim it back just a little bit to where the metal part, trim that back a little bit to where that metal part rides there. And then I'm just, these last couple frets right over the heel. That'll give it just that little bit of drop off there. And it's got the angle because of a little bit of extra tape here. As I go through and get the drop off on this neck. Perfect. Theoretically, what we should have right now is that should probably be a high fret. And it is. Just a touch, which is exactly what I wanted. Okay, for this next portion, what I'm going to do is I want to just put a slight bevel on the edge of the frets. So this file, it's already set at an angle. This will ride on top of the fretboard and just it's going to put all the fret ends in a nice bevel, consistent up and down the neck. Perfect. So the next step in the process, now that I've got the fingerboard all taped off, is again we're going to use a Sharpie and we're going to put a line right across the top of the fret. And this is basically our reference line. As we start crowning the fret, what we want to do is take a little bit off each side until we have just a thin blue line right across the top of the fret. We've got our lines drawn, got our file, and you go until you just have a nice straight blue line right across the top of your fret. But you can hear the file when it skates across it. You know you've got it pretty much smoothed out. Again, I'll check it at several places across the fretboard. This is also another opportunity to look and see if you've missed anything, missed any of the crowning, if you went a little too fast. Notice I'm kind of checking it at the middle and at each side to make sure everything's good. The next step, I've got all the recrowning done. So the frets are looking really good. Most of the scratch marks are out from the sanding when I crowned it, so that's good. So what we're going to do now, three-sided file, and the edges on this are blunt to where it can't dig into the wood, and we're just going to round over the edge of the frets where we beveled them that little bit. It only takes a couple passes, and I kind of rotate it as I go to come across the top of the fret. You don't want to do too much because you'll end up messing your frets up. Okay, just finishing off, rounding over these edges. And it's nothing drastic, just to take the sharp edge off of them. So the next part of this process is to start polishing the frets. So they've been crowned, they've been profiled on the edge, so now it's just time to go through and start polishing. What I use is I'll start off using these fret erasers. I'll use 180 grit, 400 grit, then 1000 grit, and then I'll progress up to some micro mesh to put the final gloss on them before I hit it with some polish. Now it's just time to polish. And all I'm using is some Meguiar's all metal polish with my Dremel wheel, and go through with the Dremel and just do a quick polish on all the frets. All right, just giving these a last little bit of buff before I pull the tape off. Don't know if you can see that very well, but those frets came out super polished. They are ready to go. Now, just treat my fretboard, basically a lemon oil mix. I'm gonna spray some of this on a rag and just kind of wipe it in. I'm gonna let it go on kind of thick and let it soak in. And then after a few minutes, I'll come back in and buff it off. That's had a little bit of time to soak in now, so just going to wipe off the excess. Don't know how well you can see it, but the fret ends are nice and just rolled over, nice and smooth, nice and shiny, almost like stainless steel frets at the moment, and these are just nickel. So as you can see, with just a little bit of work, they shine up really nice. So this neck is now ready for hardware. All right, so the neck is done. The frets have been leveled, recrowned, polished, the fret ends dressed, the edge of the fretboard dressed to where there's no fret sprout, and the fingerboard has been conditioned. So the frets came out just absolutely great on this. Took about 2.5 hours to do the whole process, but it's going to be well worth it in the end. So now what's time to do is to start putting the hardware on the neck and start thinking about getting the neck attached to the body. So I am using Hipshot tuners for this, and this is the first time I've used Hipshots, but I really like what I'm seeing so far. They're not staggered, they're all the same length, but what you do to line them up, I've got two options. One, I could just put them in with nothing and then drill the pilot hole and mount the screw, but what it does is it gives you these plates. So you line the plates up, and as you drop the tuner through the hole, there's flats on the plates. I don't know if you can see those or not, but what it does is that centers the tuners. So you put your tuners in, and that plate holds, that plate's flat at the top where the tuners go in, and it aligns your tuners for you, and you don't have to drill holes to mount your, see, your tuners lock in. Nice straight line. And then it's just a matter of, you've got your collar goes in. This is by far the easiest set of tuners I have ever installed. I've installed a lot of different kind, Grover, the Planet Waves, or the Planet Waves with the self-cutting strings, and Shallers. But these are by far, and then just a 10 mil socket. And we're done. They're all nice and straight, secured, they're not going to go anywhere. That plate is just outstanding. And it works for both sides. Even if you had a 3-on-3 headstock, you could do the same thing with the plate, just put it on the other side. So that's it. What, 3 minutes to install a whole set of locking tuners completely done. Now also, I've got my bridge or the nut that I need to install for the Floyd. Normally what I would do is this one bolts through with machine screws because the neck is prepped for it with bolt holes. I'm not going to Loctite these in right now, but normally what I would do is just to drop a Loctite on these once I get the nut shim to where it's supposed to be. But I won't know that until I get strings and get the strings put on and start to do the final setup to make sure I'm where I need to be. So all I've got now is just the lock washer and the machine screw. There's two separate ways you can do this. The nut comes with both. It comes with wood screws, because if these holes weren't there, what would happen is I would have to drill holes and go that route from the top side and then screw it into the wood. But this one doesn't need it. There we go. Because I've got the screws coming through from the back side. And there you have it. Nut is installed. All right, so like I said, the neck is finished. Frets have been leveled, recrowned, fret ends dressed, frets polished, fingerboard conditioned, tuners installed, nut installed. The pick guard's all finished. I went ahead and did an ops check on it to make sure everything works. Everything works perfectly on it, so it's ready to be installed. And the body. It's got the several coats of tung oil on it. Off camera, I went ahead and put shielding paint in the cavities. No need to watch that, it's just boring painting on paint. And then I also painted the cavity for the Floyd Rose route as black, and the same on the back for the springs, and the block is painted black too, just to kind of make everything nice and tidy. The next step is going to be final assembly, so that will be my next video. So once again, I'd like to say to everybody, thank you for joining. Please click like and subscribe if you'd like to keep up with what I'm doing. And I look forward to the next video. Take care. Thank you.